And there we are. Hello, everyone.
Good evening. Good morning.
So, sehr gut. Now, so we are here together again. That was that lineup happened already, I think 4 times, 5 times maybe, something like that. And we are always happy to have you here again. So that's very cool. For the people who don't know you, which is actually quite hard on LinkedIn in the software to not know you. But anyway, there has been some changes, right? Last time when you were here, you were basically at Defense Unicorns, still doing something different than you do today. Do you want to give us a little update about what you do recently?
Yes, so I have changed positions and gone to something slightly less regulated in the Department of Defense, working for in fintech. So
Slightly, just a little bit,
just slightly less regulated, which means that actually massively less regulated from a ability to deliver standpoint. But now I'm a principal architect working on everything from improving continuous delivery to implementing AI into the organization as a whole, to get to do all the fun stuff.
Mm-hmm. It's quite funny to say you're going into something less regulated, and then you talk about going into finance.
Yeah. You used to do air gap deployments of submarines and such, right?
I'm sorry.
You used to do remote.
Well, the stuff that Unicorns works on. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find something more difficult to just deliver any software in an environment, which is the problem they're trying to solve. But man, it's a big problem, and the root cause is Congress. So.
It's a tough external stakeholder.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, yeah, love the new job. It's gonna be really exciting. I'm working with a bunch of like-minded people from the DevOps community. I've always wondered what would happen if you get a bunch of us together in one area, and that's happening. So it's gonna be really interesting to see how the DevOps enterprise community can apply our dogma and unrealistic expectations to fintech.
Mm-hmm. So it's still it's a challenge for you actually to start. Do you start again actually where you started years before at Walmart or something like that, or is it like that the places you join recently are already further in the game of culture than?
So there's, frankly, every large enterprise I've talked to or visited has been a complete dumpster fire. They all are, and you'll see pockets of improvement that somebody's talked about on stage someplace, but it's all dumpster fire. I wrote a paper several years ago about what I consider to be like the fundamental things you have to have in place to actually succeed at this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And one of those was engaged leadership who understands what they're trying to do and does more than just say, you people need to improve, but is actually part of the improvement process. Mm-hmm. At the highest level. We've got that. We've got us also, we have the knowledge of previous failures, not just mine, but previous failures, previous successes in multiple contexts. Mm-hmm. We've got that. And I just got off a hackathon a winner call where I can tell we already have what I call the red shirts. So people are trying to make things better and just need some help. We already have some of those, and we're consolidating platform guardrails to make it easy for people to do the right thing. And so we've got all the pieces available if we just leverage them the right way. So I'm super excited.
Star Trek wasn't on my bingo card in the fintech context.
Star Trek.
When you said red shirts.
Red shirts are dying, actually.
No, that's
dying in every episode. So we need to explain it.
Yeah, with a target on.
Read. It's a reference from the Gene Kim used in the Unicorn Project to a book that I'd read before called Red Shirts. That's a really amusing sci-fi book that people should read.
Dennis, you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to connect the dots. We're talking about ownership today and process improvement. Things I always highlight with my teams is your output isn't just the code and the work and the outcomes you provide, but also how the process is changing. So
this is something that's been a thorn in my side for decades. When I talk to developers, you think their job is coding. So it comes from my background. The way I grew up as a developer, my very first professional development job, I was working for a company that supplied warehouse management software to other very large enterprises. GM, General Motors is one of our customers, right? Sun Microsystems was my personal customer. And my job was customizations to the system for whatever they needed to change. And I was the BA, I was the DBA, I was the tester, I was the developer, I was all of the things. And my goal was to make their business function better, not to deliver code. Yeah. I moved to Walmart, and years before I joined Walmart, the very first CIO for Walmart, David Glass, had rules, principles you want people to live by. And one of those was merchants first, technologists second. The point is the business, not the code. And when I started there, we were DevOps, except we didn't have good testing. We didn't have good automation. We didn't have, fast feedback loops, but we did have highly cohesive teams aligned to to a particular product and a particular business, working very closely with those business people. I would be on the phone with the UK all the time, talking to them about their needs while we're building stuff, and it was about the business, not I'm delivering code for a testing team. And ownership was real. In both those situations, ownership was real, because when I delivered something and didn't work at 3 o'clock in the morning, I was going to get called. And so, the way that I frame ownership is that ownership, it requires birth to death ownership. It requires owning the problem you're trying to solve, the decisions you make about how you solve it, and the consequences of those decisions, And if you don't have all three of those things, you don't really have ownership. And I've seen, and this is what we're going to talk about today, I think we've all seen management give lip service to ownership, but they actually take back all the real stuff, or outsource all the real stuff that gives you ownership. It only makes you, responsible for coding and then blame. And that's all you're on is the blame.
Yeah. Blame on missing the timeline on a business outcome.
You gave unrealistic expectations, didn't listen to us when we told you it was going to take too long. I've had that. I had back when we were doing projects, I had my manager tell me, "Oh, you need to cut 90 days off this project plan. I just have to remove the testing, and I can get you those 90 days." He said, "Okay."
So normally we have in an organization, developers these days are boiled down to work towards acceptance criteria in a Jira ticket. It's a little bit like that, and they are basically, it is a little bit like measured by these criteria. So what you just mentioned, that the ownership would definitely, you could write a ticket for yourself if you own that one, if this is the let's say the tool you want to use, but you need to own the process behind the ticket. So why is the ticket like this? What is the idea behind that? What was the feedback which led to that change? These kind of things need to be on the plate of the developers, of the software engineers who are working on that. And I agree. Let's say 10, 20 years ago, it was totally normal to work like that as a software engineer. It is a thing when things like so specific workflows, Atlassian flows, these kind of things came into being. More and more people started to branch things, started to move the software developers further and further away from the real responsibility and try to departmentalize them.
When I tell people I've used every single delivery fad people can come up with, I mean, it's just true. I mean, we started with that. At Walmart, we got a new CIO at some point with a really great idea who created silos. And so we got broken up into the PMO, the testing organization, ops, which was just support. They did tiers 0 through 2, which meant that I didn't have any way to train any new developers on how to do operations at all, because we only got calls at night on tier 3. And so you always had someone more senior also on the call because we couldn't train anybody on ops. Detached everybody from everything. When I owned it all, I could help make business decisions and guide the business when they made poor requests. I remember I tell a story about a teammate of mine who said, well, the business just asked for something really dumb and it's a really bad idea. And I told them that idea and they just said, no, we're going to do it. So what I've done is I've wrapped in the feature flag. So when they figure out it's a bad idea, I can just turn it off and delete the code, which he did. They go, oh my God, no, that won't ever work after the pilot. And he turned it off and deleted the code. So yeah, I told you so. But he had business knowledge to know that they were wrong.
Bryan, what's the blast radius and timeline of a repeatable process? You said you said every company is a dumpster, is a dumpster fire.
Wait, back up and ask the question again. I didn't hear the whole question.
So what's the timeline, the blast radius on this story, on this transformation of going from every company is a dumpster fire to it finally got sorted once I owned and understood the entire domain? What happens in between? Are we talking about years? Are we talking about a key conversation? Are we talking about what is the impetus at the beginning? What's the middle?
So I had a really good friend of mine, Scott Nasello. I met him when he worked at Columbia Sports, and he told me, we were drinking beer at DevOps Enterprise Summit one evening, and he said, Bryan, we made a mistake. For the things we're trying to accomplish, we should not have gone for engineering degrees. We should have gone for psychology degrees. Because, and this is the phrase I always repeat. He says, because what we're trying to do is hack the biggest undocumented API. All of this stuff is mostly people, and how do you get people wanting to change? Because there's some people who are just dissatisfied and want change, but just feel powerless, or they try something and it gets shot down because they just don't have the influence to make it happen.
Now you're talking my language.
There's other people who are like, they're happy where they are. And this is something I sent one of my teammates a blog post I wrote years ago called DevOps Darwinism that says your organization is delivering exactly as it's designed to deliver, and you can't change culture. All you can do is make people feel less successful with the way they're currently working, and put the incentives in place for the culture that you'd like to have, and then get people to ask for help. You can't fix people. All you can do is get people to want to be helped. So if they feel unsuccessful, and ask for help, and then make sure you give them the right help, and then things change. And it takes a while. It takes a long time. This is you're doing that. You don't dive in and say, oh, look, I'm going to get a gig for 6 months and transform an enterprise. It doesn't even matter how small the enterprise is. It's years. This is something where you got to give everything to it. It's fun though, because you help people, you see people's lives improve, and it makes it worthwhile.
Well, when it comes to ownership, it makes it worthwhile. See, I I got into coaching for those same reasons, because you tried a few times, you know it's hard, and you just, I was that stubborn person who said it's worth it, and then you succeed a few times, and then you know, okay, it's rough, it's annoying, but it's
certain
worth
level
it.
of crazy.
Yes, it is. Yes, that's
I'm
how I
going to say
feel.
something just entirely culturally insensitive, but I'm German heritage, so it's fine. I saw a video yesterday that I showed my wife. It was a little short. It was a German immigrant being raided by ICE. And the ICE agent was outside the door asking him questions to find out if he was German or American. You know, he was asking what kind of beer he likes. This is Coors. He's just like, oh. You know, and he asked him all these questions. And the final question he asked is, there's a party starting at 9 o'clock and what time do you arrive? He says, yeah, 8:55, because if you're on time, you're late. And I'm like,
I saw that one as well.
Yes, I understand, because that's how I am. But it's the same thing. It's the stubbornness, the hard-headedness. I think Germans make really good change agents because we just don't give up. I mean, you try arguing with me sometime when I know I'm right.
The problem with Germans is, so once they are on a journey, they will push through. The problem is to get them on the journey.
Yeah.
Or to persist long enough to actually see it through.
Historically, it's not always proven to be a good idea, but you know, it's just.
Hey, that was fast. Bryan, so the reason I sort of started this then, when it comes to ownership, you sort of describe the hellscape, the worst case scenario of such ownership kerfuffle or theater in a satire guidebook called SATMF. And it's ironic how convincing it is and how often people respond to it. It's like, yeah, I know it's satire, but that's exactly what's happening in my organization. And in a way that's concerning, but I mean, it's funny, but also in a way it's concerning, like the level of how often it happens on LinkedIn that you link SATMF and people take it seriously. It's like, oh yeah, like that's what my boss is following 100%.
No. So SATMF was incredibly easy for me to compose, and there are a few other people have contributed stuff, but most of it happened while I was in between jobs. You know, on vacation, waiting for my Defense Unicorns gig to start. That's when most of that content happened, and it was just either things that I'd seen, things that I'd lived through, things people had talked to me about that are just real things. And I just, then I wrapped it up into a nautical theme, so you can have release convoys, because release trains can't steer, can't change direction with a train, but ships can turn. And then just wrapped it up to that. You had to have acronyms because it's not a real transformation unless you have acronyms.
And you have a certificate as well, right?
Huh? Yeah. Of course. It's not real unless you have a certificate. And so, I mean, you can be a SAD fellow for $20, and you're really committed because you spent $15 more than a SAD practitioner. Means you know more. But it's all real stuff and real pain that I've either experienced or lived vicariously through others about just massive dysfunction. But when it comes back to ownership, some of the big problems I've seen with ownership, I've seen, I don't own quality anymore because now my manager owns quality because they're dictating how we're going to do our quality process instead of asking for quality outcomes. So now they own quality. They've hired a testing team to do it. Oh, and by the way, the testers now own quality. So if there's a defect that makes a production, it's their fault. I've had testers. This is why I would hate to be a tester, why we don't need testing teams, is because they want being the scapegoats for problems that I might cause. That's a terrible way to live. Or I went to my senior vice president when we were trying to migrate away from the pillars that they created years before back to real product teams with real ownership using continuous delivery, and trying to patch back together the culture we needed for that, including operational responsibility. And we went, and ops was in like an entirely different report structure now. So I had to go and try to negotiate with ops that they would work with us and come up with a way that this would work and bypass the HR boundaries so we could reach and get our ownership back. And they didn't want to work with us at all because it would harm their metrics. And so fortunately, their rules for handoff have changed. We would never be able to meet because they wanted like 90 days of feature stability with a KT process, and I'm delivering change every day, so I can't do 90 days of feature stability. Sorry. Darn, I guess I'll just have to take ops back for my own thing. Darn. But I went to my senior vice president. I said, there's an entire organization that exists so that I can deliver shit and sleep well at night. I said, that's a problem.
It is.
Because quality, I mean, frankly, quality is an outcome of the fear of poor quality. What will happen to me personally if bad quality exists? That's how quality happens.
Yeah, but if people, put a lot of distance between you and the actual outcome, so, the fear is fading. It's basically not existing.
I'm more afraid of missing the date. That's not how you get quality outcomes. I should be afraid of the bad outcomes, not missing a date. Not missing how many story points I delivered this sprint. That's garbage. We're supposed to be focused on outcomes. We talk to people about outcomes matter, and then we organize our entire organization around shipping poor quality, and then complain that software quality is in the garbage and what we need is just better testers. You've organized for failure. Testing won't work your way out of it.
Bryan, you frame it as quality being 90%, 80% a result of the incentive structure, at least when it comes to the product engineering org, platform org.
Everything, it's 100% how do we incentivize people.
What's the role of mid to staff level leadership, engineering leadership, in a situation where the incentives just obviously aren't right?
They should be doing what I try to do, which is say, hey, we've got these systemic issues that we need to look at. But the problem is that
somebody's tone deaf, right? Like if you're in this.
Well, other than that, it seems really uncommon that people look at it from a systemic point of view.
Yeah. They see their little bubble, and then they're not sure whether it's them or us or.
Well, you can see it. An example, a really common example of conversations I have right now online is around AI. It's like AI causes security problems. No, AI doesn't cause security problems.
It's people who introduce AI clumsily that
use the tool correctly, how to leverage its capabilities, how to use it for what it's really good for, and how to use it to identify security problems is causing security problems. I would cause security problems too. It's just that I'm doing it slower. And it's not the AI, it's how you've organized your workflow that's causing the problem. You're not looking at it from a broader picture. And it's so very rare that I see people at any level, and I'm including a C-suite, really looking at it strategically. They're very, very tactical and not really doing a deep dive and root cause analysis for things like, well, why did we get here? Why did we get here? How could this happen? It's like CrowdStrike. The CrowdStrike too.
I spoke to you mentioned that the C-suite is very tactical. I spoke to a European CEO, sort of technical, semi-technical CEO who has a CTO, who has engineers in his team, a startup, and they came into this conversation of, hey, Dennis, I did this thing last week where I vibe coded a prototype for an idea that I was having, and I presented it to my CTO and my tech lead, and they were super upset that, it's like they were super upset that I did something like this, that I'm using the tool. Like, well, why can't they understand this? Why aren't they so AI forward as I am? And when you say CEO, the C-suite tends to be super tactical, it often, I think, there's some charm, some romanticized idea of the output itself, and we tend to forget that we hired experts to solve problems. So like it's
Well, there's also
it seems like a bad idea. It probably is, but
well, there's also a disconnect that developers have with, number one, they're a lot of developers fall in love with the code and not the problem.
Yes, so that's why I wanted to mention it, right? Because the developers often romanticize this idea of, you know what, I actually enjoy this cuddling of keep me away from the business problem, while at the same time, the non-engineering people, for example, this semi-technical founder, they romanticize this idea of, oh, what if we could also create some code and some output without all of that complicated engineering skill? So it is like it is sort of perpetuated and caused by both sides. By neglect from both sides. It's not all, CEOs of AI companies pushing the Kool-Aid. Like it is caused from both sides.
Yeah, because look, I've got this tool that allows me not to deal with those troublesome developers. And I've got really great ideas. I don't have to wait for, next quarter to see them implemented. I can look what I can throw together now.
Yeah.
But there's, I get this morning, I had someone talking to me about how using AI just removes all the artistry. That it's like getting an artist to paint a painting, and their job is to tell a robot how to do it. I'm like, you're not an artist. This is industrial delivery
of engineering, yeah.
Right. This is not craft furniture, arts and crafts furniture. That the goal is pretty furniture. The goal is a useful piece of furniture that's repeatable.
Yeah.
Our job as professional software engineers is to solve real business problems efficiently and effectively with the best tools we have at our disposal to get that done, not to romanticize the craft of coding.
That's the reason why we call it engineering, actually, and not crafting.
There is still something to be said about craft. Adrian and I argue about this endlessly.
I think what you mean by craft, right? Because I tell people master craft. What I mean is understand deeply what the work is and how to get it done well. It doesn't mean just obsess about whether or not this piece of code is as efficient as possible. Is it efficient enough?
That obsession, that obsession I don't even mind. What reminds me of what you just said about artistry, what I'm thinking of is a sculptor. They have a rock and they produce, Michelangelo's David. And every time I hear that argument now, I'm sort of starting to compartmentalize and get used to this argument, over the past few decades of hearing it all the time. But it's art, or it has like a gut feel element to it. And every time I hear that argument, every time I hear that story, that sort of romanticized notion of this is art, I'm doing something a machine cannot do. All I'm hearing nowadays is just, dude, your batch size must be enormous, right? Because you can't have that sense of artistry if you're working in small steps. And
no, that's my response was if you think that a machine is doing all the hard work of solving your problems, you're not solving very hard problems.
Mm-hmm.
That the artistry is in how do we solve big problems quickly, efficiently, repeatably, high quality. It's not in how well I crafted this method.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't care. I mean, because if you're going to talk about how well you crafted this method, let's go just decompile it into assembler and see how clean that assembler code is.
We used to have that.
Oh, yeah.
Before the Borland,
for that back then.
Before the Borland compilers came out, everybody was sort of hiding how they unroll their loops, how they do their their jumps that have an exception case, and then their jumps that don't have an exception case, or a stack jump versus a heap related jump. People were proud of their accomplishments, and then compilers came along and they solved the problem much better.
If I was super concerned about how beautiful the assembler was, I wouldn't be writing modular code. This jumps everywhere.
I heard that one more than once in university.
The assembler class before they start pontificating about the beauty of code. It's just that is it easy to change? Is it fit for purpose? That's it.
Yeah, or does the business even need, like, does the business need, but can the business even leverage that amount of speed, or are we just polishing for no reason?
I heard an anecdote one time about American scientists comparing notes with Russian scientists about the purity of their weapons grade plutonium. And the Russians were talking about how many, decimal points more pure their plutonium was than the Americans. Americans said ours goes boom.
It's a dirty bomb anyway, right?
It works. I don't know how much more purity you need.
No one after the bomb is falling, so basically exploding, no one will measure it. There's no one there to measure it anymore.
I've always been a very pragmatic developer because my goal is solving the business problem. If the business problem is solved, and I can continue solving that business problem without excessive toil, then I'm done.
I'm doing that daily today, so that's still my job. So I am entrepreneur and developer. So I see the development, the craft I learned is there to actually do the engineering part. So it simply enables me to understand what I need to do. So this is the reason I mastered it. And now I can actually execute on an engineering level. So, but my focus is the engineering level. I need to understand why I make a change. So,
So that I think that's incredibly important also for the current topic around AI, is that when I start pressing people on the challenges they have with AI, it's because they can't describe why they're making the change.
Yeah.
They don't know how to test because they've learned to test imperatively. Test, and so which is why unit testing is a waste of time because it tightly couples, because I have to keep changing the test every time I refactor the code, because you never learned how to describe the behaviors you're trying to accomplish. You're not sitting back and thinking, what are my goals? Why am I trying to achieve it? And how can I describe what the outcome should be? I told somebody today that you're using AI as if it's an automated typewriter instead of you're telling it how to do something instead of what the goal should be.
But you raise an interesting point about the whole thing that makes AI interesting to us right now is this sort of renaissance of extreme programming, because it is a accelerator, and the more it accelerates code output, it also amplify. Hang on. I know. It's not clickbait. It also amplifies the signal of how important your neglect or your focus on the XP principles are, and what you just said about, hey, testing is bad. Of course, testing is bad. You've never learned how to decouple the functionality from the behaviors, how to describe it, how to write it down. But now you see how such a person can find themselves entrapped in such a situation where you can have organizational silos, and then you can have testers, and then you can have AI, and then you can have incorrect incentives, and then you can have the engineer, and now you're asking them to describe the behavior, but they won't be able to even learn how to describe the behavior of their system because they don't own the business problem that it's trying to solve. Without that ownership of that business problem, or at least with the proximity to somebody who owns the business problem, they have zero chance of describing the behavior.
So Michael said BDD baby. So let me tell you that when we started clawing back the business problem in logistics at Walmart, and because you have to understand the business problems to do CI.
Yes.
Which you have to have CI for CDE.
Yes.
I hadn't even heard of BDD at the time. But I was known around the building as the BDD guy because I was going from team to team to team saying, look at this cool new tool we found that's enabling us to have much higher quality because we're no longer coding something and then asking the business, is this the rock you wanted? We now have a contract with the business of this is the rock you asked for. and we can rapidly deliver that. And now with agents, when I don't actually have to physically type the code, I can just feed them the acceptance criteria. Oh my God, right? It's amazing. But circling back, it's because I own the problem. I understand the problem deeply, or I work with people who do, so that we collaborate to understand the problem, so we can describe what the expected outcome should be. I honestly don't care how the code is written, as long as I get the outcome and it's performant enough to be fit for purpose. It's secure enough to be fit for purpose. When I tell people, if it's fit for purpose, that's the definition of quality. That's defined by the outcome it achieves. And people say, well, yeah, but it's an insecure code. Then it's not fit for purpose. Now, is it?
Mhm.
So is it fit for purpose?
But you can see how people get led astray.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we have now described it as a very one-sided problem to solve, and it has to be solved top to bottom first.
I agree and disagree. At the organizational level, if you want quality in an organization, you have to solve it from the top.
Yes.
As individual engineers, you need to be aware of how you should be working and up yourself.
Yes.
And then, you know what? Go work for some place that doesn't suck.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should up your credibility as an engineer. So it's a little bit like you need to work on yourself. It always starts with yourself. So the top needs to work on itself and the bottom needs to work on itself, and they need to meet in the middle. That's the idea of a company, of a team, of a large team. Let's say, let's not use the terminology team, but let's say with companies. So if we want
organization,
if we want to bridge the gaps, we need to work towards the others. That's the idea behind that.
I would still say they need to meet at the top. Like meeting in the middle is usually quite nasty when it comes to outsourcing it to, hey, we have engineering quality problems. Hey, engineering, fix your engineering quality problems. No, you need to ask, you need to still meet at the top and ask yourself, what incentives did we set up that lead to this kind of attitude?
Here's the tip for the frustrated engineers who know what good should look like, or suspect what good should look like, who see glimpses of good and want to see and figure out how to get that spread, is you have to have an ally up in the upper levels of management. You don't build that ally by talking to them about how cool continuous delivery is, or look what I whipped together real quick with AI. You talk to them in the language they need to hear about the business outcomes that we can be able to achieve, and the reduced cost of ownership from reduced support that we can achieve if we focus on a few improvement and say we don't have to do all of the things. Here's the steps we can go through to start raising the bar on delivering better outcomes to the business. And you talk to them about the business, but you have to know the business to do that. So learn about the business you're working in. I've never worked in fintech before. It's very much, it's very much like supply chain, except there's no physical boxes. It's all electronic. So I've got at least that to leverage. But I know there's stuff about the business that I'm going to have to learn deeply, so I can talk to the business people about changes that we're going to have to make to deliver better business outcomes.
We should go to the questions because we promised something. I go now. I just put them on screen, and then we can go over them. I read them out loud.
Can you change the theme, Adrian, to something with a black background, maybe?
Yeah, this is great. Sorry, Bryan, for a second. We just imagine you are here. I'm a huge fan of Bryan. He always represents some of the best experiences I have as a Scrum Master. Engineering excellence seems to be something most leaders in these organizations miss. Quality should be foundational for every single person. How have you guys... Oh, wait a second. This is cut off.
Have it open. Hang on.
Yeah, just FYI, I can't see the actual comments other than what's.
How have you guys handled this when it comes to this leadership miss?
By doing the hearts and minds work to talk to leadership about what's possible, sending them either articles that are written for their persona to look at, just keep working on them about problems they have and solutions that you've seen that would help solve these problems. Come to them with solutions, but give them also references that show that you're not just making it up. But it takes time. It could take a lot of time. Even when we had an SVP who read the Phoenix Project and said, we're going to do that. We still had, and he was pushing hard on his reports and his reports and their reports, because he was 4 levels of management away from me, right? He was pushing hard on everybody to do that, and it still took feedback from the pointy end of the spear back to him about how that influence was working or not working to change things over time. And some of that was grudging change, and some of that was real change in the leadership. But it takes you need to find someone who believes that things can improve and isn't afraid to try and become their friend.
But ultimately, I think, like, unintuitively, quality processes, quality outcomes are a result of good leadership and not engineering skill, like not purely engineering skill. Like
and leadership is also a skill that a good engineer needs to have. You're not a senior engineer, I'm sorry, unless you can lead instead of tell people what to do. And you're not a senior engineer if you can't communicate to people without using developer jargon to explain what problems are in a way that other people can understand. These are all skills that we need to learn. I was terrible at soft skills until I was trying to solve this one particular problem. How do we deliver today's work today? And I had to go and learn all kinds of soft skills to solve the problem. How do we deliver today's work today?
It is like that. And you need to be a role model for others. So you can't be like, you will have a mixed organization of people, of inexperienced people, of experienced people. And the experienced people need to make sure that the system is unblocked, that the people understand how to use that. Why are we actually going to do this? Not just how you do this, but why. And you need to transport that message.
As a tech lead, this was the hardest lesson for me to learn and to internalize, was to tell people what the goals were. And even if I thought I knew the answer, mostly letting them come up with the answer. So they were bought in, and not telling people how to do things, but like, hey, I've got some ideas. Let's see if we can, and collaborate on what those ideas are. Elevate other people. I had this habit of, we both have, I've got a junior engineer who has an idea and I have an idea. Who's going to win? Well, will their idea drive us into a hole? No, they get to win. Right? Because that excites them. They get to see their stuff done, and it excites me because my goal gets accomplished. You don't have to use my ideas to meet my goals, but we still have to meet my goals.
We have a question for the typical author of 5 Minutes DevOps, which is you, Bryan, again. I feel the issue. That was a question or statement, several. But what will you suggest to completely remove the ops team?
I wrote a blog post about this a few years ago. I said that operations is the people closest to the business. They understand the problems more deeply than anybody else in your organization. So what you do is you eliminate the development team, and you just have the ops team do the development. Done.
And they will hire developers, which they put in their teams, and then they become the DevOps team.
Yeah, but I mean, more practically, you just really explain to leadership the problem of the disconnect between development and operations, about how there's not only are there incentive misalignments in a lot of cases, that there's also the feedback delay that happens, that you've got a buffer between you and quality signal. That the ultimate quality signal, again, you can get indications that things aren't performing as designed before you deliver to production, but you can't get any indication about whether they're performing as needed before you deliver to production. And when you have an operations team that acts as a buffer, they're just reporting defects, but you're not really getting any deep knowledge of what's actually needed. Why are we having defects reported?
And often, exactly. And oftentimes there's
the one that's even fundamentally more important going back to when we created silos at Walmart and I was tier 3 support.
Yeah.
I didn't get any indication that things were going south at all until it blew up into a tier 3 call where I already had very angry customers on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get any warning that changes were starting to degrade stability, nothing, because ops was the buffer to improve developer productivity to protect us from support.
And what you're describing is already such a situation where the development silo is so disenfranchised from the business that what the business has done is essentially create an internal agency that does development work that they're sort of buying stuff from. And then the signal that they receive isn't really the customer-facing signal. It's just that internal signal that is transactional of please do this, yes, okay, how much?
Based on daily form and mood.
I created the PMO. They definitely didn't want me to get on the call to a director of operations in Asda in the UK. They just didn't want that to happen. You know, we were just fed. Here's the story. Here's the acceptance criteria. Go code monkey. You know, when we started clawing that back, you know, the story I tell about why I care so much about CD and why I push it so hard. I am not a paid consultant for continuous delivery. I'm a working developer working in the enterprise. I do not wish to be a consultant. I only want to help people live better lives, because the first team we did it on, we went from operating in a model where we were handed stuff to do to operating in a model where we're getting Slack conversations with business people using our system in the distribution center, giving us feedback on the latest change we made the day before. Hey, wouldn't it be cool if we tweak this slightly to do this? And spinning it around and giving it to them the next day and say, what do you think now? Like, oh yeah, this is even better. That's an amazing way to live. And the entire team felt it.
I would go for some other
team. We had a team that was a mixed team with everything from barely able to code to hotshot developers who were too hotshot to be on the team and needed to go away. And the entire team's morale was just the massive improvement you saw over an 18-month period where we learned how to do this.
I really love how deeply emotional you get about these topics, because it is, you know, that's one of the reasons I love when we talk together in this round. It's like these things are that emotional, because if we don't handle them correctly, we are in a place we don't want to be as developers, especially, right? And that's the only way to actually do something about it is to not only do it top down, but get the developers and the engineers out there to understand that and try to, you know, to infuse that or get that spark as well to change something. You need to understand that this is the vision and the mission we actually should have, right? Well, anyway, let's go to through some. Saish is saying the same as well here. You can see that in the chat. Basically saying it's not the very same thing, but it is like going down the top-down approach, which is
so I agree. Also, except there's one quibble I'd have. Local optimization is a way to demonstrate that broader optimization is worthwhile. So if you can localize optimally and like, okay, look, this is how we did it. This is not. This is also the reason why I'm really glad that when we piloted this, we piloted it with just standard teams. We didn't assemble like a tiger team of experts to go and pilot continuous delivery, because that's not repeatable. That doesn't scale, right? What we could do is create standard teams who can barely deliver, and now look at what we're able to accomplish. But yeah, you know, when you get bought in and say, yeah, we need to do this at a broader level, yeah, it takes top-down support, but it's not a top-down push. This, like I said when we were starting out, about that we have all the pieces in place where I'm working now. You have to be partnership between the tip of the spear and the top of the stack, squeezing out the frozen middle, working together closely to drive the improvement. You can't just do what you're told. You have to collaborate with the C-suite and say, okay, this is what we're doing next.
A slight thing that I would disagree on, or maybe nuance, is that top-down push is good in my experience, but it doesn't need to be synchronized across the entire horizontal, right? So it doesn't have to be uniformly synchronized across the entire width of the organization. But if you can do like one, if you look at it like a tree, if you can do it, leave the root on like one area and localize it, but push along at least one entire vertical, that is a very good pillar on which to sort of show, look, we made a change here, it worked. Now let's use this as an example to influence our neighbors, our peers, let's do a little skip level analysis there and see how else we can scale this local change that was successful.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree, and also I think understanding the culture that you like the executive culture you work in is important. Where I worked before, the executive culture was the VPs competed against each other to see who could be the next, senior, or the next senior VP or the next, CTO, right? And so when I was working in platform, the original job I had was the technical product owner of the metrics dashboard. So we were displaying delivery metrics and gamifying them around continuous delivery. And I was the game master for that. And I put together an entire dashboard that all it did was compare VP metrics against each other. Because I'm subversive that way. My director loved it. He thought it was amazing, but he's also pretty subversive.
I have another question. Yeah. So Austin Wiggins is asking. This is a junior question now. What's your 5 minute pitch for what you think junior engineers should be working on to be more effective? For context, I'm in my early 30s and I got my first software engineering job, and I'm just trying to learn from as many well-performing engineers as possible.
Great question. Hey, Austin.
Yeah, it really is. And when I was at Finch Unicorn's last job I had 2 bootcamp graduates where I was the very first senior engineer they ever worked with, which was an amazing honor. Let me tell you. Make sure you land someplace where you're facing hard problems. I mean, you need to learn the fundamentals of good software in development. I would read Modern Software Engineering. I think that should be just required reading at every college course or every boot camp is Modern Software Engineering. Read that, internalize that book. Dave has done a really good job of distilling this answers to your question down to this. But also, don't get bored. Just don't. If you're not solving hard problems, find a way to go where you can solve harder problems. Make sure that you've got seniors around you or good mentors around you who aren't trying to gatekeep, who are really trying to elevate you and get you to that next level, really understand how to avoid the pain that we went through to get, as old and gray as we are. You must surround yourself with good people who are trying to help. If you're in a situation, and I know people, I was talking to some of my teammates, those bootcamp graduates, about some of their fellow classmates that had been working on a login screen for 6 months and never delivered anything. Where on my team, we were delivering multiple times a day. They're working on, I was giving them, all the problems to solve. When we were collaborating as peers, not as juniors and seniors, to get problems, to solve problems together. They would come with solutions I didn't know about for a framework I was new to. We'd implement their solution. Yep, that worked. Cool, good job. But you need to be in an environment that's collaborative and helping you become the best you instead of just go code monkey. Do what I say.
Yeah. Well, one of the litmus tests, and Austin, if you're still with us, if you can send us a signal that you're still here, because we might have follow-up answers or questions for you. One of the very first things I learned as an engineer was you need to be in a collaborative environment, as Bryan said, and you can tell whether or not you're in a supportive collaborative environment based on a sort of gut feel for how long it is normal or whatever perception you're using for that, for you to be blocked, right? So if you're in a collaborative environment, it is okay for you to say, hey, I'm a junior here, I shouldn't be blocked. I should not be blocked for more than 1 hour. It should be expected of me to reach out for help and get help if I'm blocked for more than an hour, unless my work is actually, hey, do some research on how to do this, let's check your findings tomorrow or something like that, right? So if you're in a unsupportive, maybe non-collaborative or hyper individualized, like for individual efficiency, like optimized for individual or local efficiency, if you're in such an environment, it can create the perception that it's okay for you to be blocked for days, perhaps even weeks, before somebody will, treat you to support as if you're calling some kind of technical support hotline.
And honestly, if you're, I know the job market's tough, but it costs nothing to look for a job. If you're in a situation where this is one of the earliest ways we could tell a team was entirely dysfunctional when I was leading the dojo, was we walk into a team and look at their Jira board and see if they had filters by people's names.
Mm-hmm.
And if they had individual workflow filters for people, we knew that was an entirely dysfunctional team that we're going to have to do a lot of work to fix.
Yeah.
There's a group of crows.
Can you mentioned this quite a few times already in your past episodes. Just for people like Austin who might not have the full topology under their hood yet, why is that a bad thing explicitly from your perspective?
Because it's not my work; it's our work.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't deliver, did I fail or did the team fail?
Mm-hmm.
Team failed. If I need help, I'm taking away from somebody else's delivery metrics for them to help me, so they don't want to help me.
Mm-hmm.
If I need code review, I'm taking away from someone else's delivery metrics for them to do code review, so they don't want a code review. It also means that we're delivering everything 80% instead of delivering 80% of everything. Because we're not collaborating as a team. We don't get to share with each other. You can't walk over and just spend a day helping me solve a hard problem.
Mm-hmm.
We're not working on delivering priorities and priority sequence. We're just delivering story points that were assigned. There's the group names for things, like a group of crows is a murder of crows. A group of developers co-located on a backlog with individual responsibility is not a team. Mm. It's a pandemonium of developers.
It's a coding sweatshop. It's called monkeys. Also popularized as a feature factory.
You can identify incompetent management immediately because of the team structure.
Yeah.
I go on with the next one. Abhinav asks, continue from our discussion. What do you suggest for mid-management folks who have stepped a bit away from coding? I think in regards to the ownership and delivery idea, I think.
So, I don't believe you have to be an expert at development to be able to do this, to do the management job.
So, Abhinav asked previously about whether to completely remove the ops team. I think it's connected to that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, then I'm lost on the question. What's the question?
Now, there's the question. It was a follow-up for the DevOps question.
My suggestion for management that has not been coding for a while is to, number one, don't forget that coding is harder than you remember. Because I continue to code even when it's not part of my job. Mm-hmm. Necessarily, because otherwise I forget how hard coding is. And it's easy to only remember that it's pretty easy. Some things are really, really hard. But focus on the broader picture of how do we develop it as a whole better, not just how do we code better, right? Mm-hmm. How do we organize things for better flow of communication so we can have a better flow of the value stream as a whole. Right, be more strategic, and coding is a tactical activity. It's implementation detail. How do I make the implementation easier to achieve? Let's talk about behavior-driven development. Have we looked into bringing into business and collaborating more closely with them to improve our communication flow? The best manager I ever reported to, well, she was a senior director, and there was a manager between us, but the best hands-on leader, cheerleading all of the improvements you're trying to do was a 30-year Walmart associate that came from distribution center operations and had never written a line of code in her life. But she studied about software development. She introduced Agile to Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
She never coded. You don't have, I mean, yes, you'll be better leading a coding organization if you understand what coding is about, if you remember how coding is. And you can help with when people have conflicts over engineering disputes. But I disagree with the concept that you have to be a hotshot developer to be a manager.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're different skills.
I had a long-term CTO mentoring with a CTO in America, and it was about that she was. The idea was that she wanted to catch up with all the tech stuff because she was a business CTO, a real business person getting into the CTO role. And I talked to her, and it took 3 sessions to convince her that we shouldn't learn these. We should learn other things. We shouldn't learn how AWS is working, GCP is working, Kubernetes is working, something like that is working. That is not the point. And that was a very good decision because that person was so good in managing people. Not managing, but leading people. Sorry, really, it was a really getting 2 large organizations together, and it was nice to see how that actually worked out. And more senior persons stood up and supported her with the technical stuff. So they were taking the role of the how things are actually working, and basically build the bridge, or bridge the gap of her knowledge gaps to the actual team. But what she was providing was the clarity and getting the organization and the development teams together, or 2 organizations, and that was nice.
So this is the thing. If you have a CTO that has to be worried about how EKS is configured, there's something seriously broken in your organization. The role of a CTO is to be strategic. How can technology achieve our business goals?
Yeah.
How can we, what do we need to do from a technology point of view to better achieve our business goals? They're business people. They shouldn't be spending their weekends throwing together something, a POC. They should be spending their weekends throwing together some business plans about what we need to have teams focus on.
Or business simulations based on tech, not cost estimations based on AWS usage or Lambda usage. I have a follow-up question on Abhinav's question. I have a gut feel for where he was headed with that. When you claw back, you said when you claw back the ownership of the business problems from the business people, I imagine there's quite a few middle managers that end up on the roadside. How do you handle that without them losing face, especially if they don't want to step back into coding?
It's very much going to depend on the situation you're in, in the organization. I'll say that where I was, we were clawing back the business problem. For a while, we had someone from the business assigned to our team as a product owner. Now, the role they were told they were supposed to be doing was to create user stories. So I just subverted their role. I told them that they were team members, not other than the team, and that if they wanted
outside,
they weren't outside the team; they were of the team, and that what I needed them to do was collaborate with us on clarifying with BDD. That's what I needed them to do. Now, fortunately, when I have a way of talking to people that they believe me when I sell them things. His manager disagreed, and we had a lot of conflict. Many 2-on-1s with my manager in their office. But I'm not going to let your kingdom building interfere with my ability to deliver. So we're just going to do it my way. Thanks. From the middle other situations of middle management getting displaced. When in the dojo, we'd go around to areas that were still using SAFe, and we'd start trying to implement things. And some of our biggest detractors were release train engineers, which is 100% Google B-arc position.
Yeah.
Like telephone sanitizers.
Scrum Master, Delivery Manager, like.
But their job was to organize the teams into the release trains. Well, you don't need that when the release train is my team right now today. They didn't like that, but that's why you need executive support, is because they can clear roadblocks like that.
That's the point. That's one of the superpowers of the actual persons who are in power in the traditional sense. They can remove roadblocks way better than people at the bottom.
We had, just straight up, and I'm glad I'm far enough away from an NDA that none of this is going to come back and bite me. We had a senior director who replaced Kim, who I loved Kim. She's just an amazing person. Came in, didn't understand what we were doing, was causing all sorts of havoc, and was driving our teams into the dirt. And on a death march, wouldn't listen to any feedback at all about the harm he was causing. And eventually I and 2 other senior engineers went to our SVP again, 4 levels up, and told him exactly what happened. And he started micromanaging the VP, the senior director, all of the managers below him, pulled all of the developers into a room and personally apologized. That's leadership.
That's building up credibility, being a role model, sharing or showing a vision, and being able to be challenged yourself before you challenge others. So, be challenged first. That is the sign of a strength of character.
He was also old school Walmart, and old school Walmart is servant leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Your job is to clear roadblocks, not to tell people what to do.
Okay.
Get out of their way, let them do their jobs.
So we have a statement left from Niels, who was participating well today. Good job, man. Oh man, I'm craving a cooperative environment so much. All I experienced are collections of developers that happen to have the same superior, everyone working on his or her own tickets alone. That's not a team. I agree there. That's one of the biggest issues.
I've been doing this job too long to tolerate that environment anymore, and I refuse to work in an environment that I just won't. I'll just quit. I know that we can pay the bills if I don't have a job at all. So you can't frighten me into working the way you want to work if it's just destructive to the team.
Yeah.
I know that that's privilege that I have and not everybody has, but I highly encourage everybody to find a position where it's not like that. And when you're in a job interview, like when I was job interviewing recently, I interviewed the companies.
I recorded a video today outside when I was running, and it was about freedom. So if you want to have freedom in your life, right, and you are an employed person, right, so there is already a form of tension there. Yep. You need to be able to align your own purpose with the purpose of the company. And if your whole purpose in the company is to fulfill the acceptance criteria within a ticket in isolation, all by yourself, then basically there is no purpose you can align with yourself. You will never be free. You are just a code monkey who is fulfilling a artificial goal someone else has defined for you.
And not only that, but I can have a robot do that today.
Yeah, more and more. So in, let's say 3-5 years, the typical basic feature-driven agency work. So a developer is creating code for something else, will not be necessary anymore. I'm 100% sure about that. When I see the development of Cloud Code, and I was an early adopter of Cloud Code, so I was making videos about that, and what it is able to do today even stuns me a year after I used it the first time.
Yeah.
And I am not coding anymore myself, or rarely.
Typing, but we need to anymore.
I have a key. I use that keyboard, of course, right? But it is more like to communicate as a senior engineer with a peer. That is how I communicate.
So when I was in between jobs, waiting to start the new job, I had some spare time to work on something I've wanted to do for a long time, and one of those, it was to have an animated version of the dependency tree I'd drawn back in 2015 to help us decompose the continuous delivery problem, which, by the way, started with BDD. It was like central to it.
Yeah.
But it was this. I wanted this diagram, and I wanted people to be able to navigate through it, and get more information. And but I honestly didn't know how to do it because I'm not a front end developer. I just knew what I wanted it to do, and so I just sat down one weekend while watching movies and playing with Lego, and built a Svelte agent. Sure, we were writing idiomatic Svelte 5. I built a domain-driven design agent. I built a test review agent to make sure we're doing declarative testing. I built all these agents, and then I told it what. And then I started. And then I worked with Claude to come up with a feature file. We collaborated on the feature. We collaborated on BDD together. Came up with a feature file, and then told it to go and implement. And then I drank coffee while it built the thing.
And it was probably very close to the version you want to have.
Yeah, at the end of the weekend, I had something that I wasn't embarrassed of, and a week later, I'd been collecting feedback because I released it publicly and collected feedback on it, added some features, and now there's a tool on minimumcd.org. If you go on their process. You click on there and it'll bring up that thing and you can run it locally. You can click off the things that you've done and talk about % complete around things. You can see all the dependencies, what you have to do first before some other thing to get to a goal. Like, hey, we want to do CI, we got to do this first, and then we got to do that, and walk through it. I didn't know how to do most of the things it does, other than I can write some Svelte and create a web page in Svelte. Mm-hmm. Like line routing between boxes, I have no idea how to do that. I knew enough to say I don't like the way it's done, make the line routing better, and it did.
Practices. I don't know that.
Well, hang on.
Is that the one?
Let me tell you the actual thing, because I'm probably misremembering what it actually is. I'm terrible with names.
But I think that's the one you were talking about publicly on.
Yeah. If you open the top menu on minimum CD and click practices,
that's the one.
You get the CD dependency tree.
That's the one. Bryan, when you talked about the machine or agents, I think the three of us are talking about LLMs and so transformers and generators, GPTs in general, in the sense of we're using them to type faster. At the very least, how much are you driving the interaction, and how big of a step are you taking? Because I think I've observed a lot of engineers use it, and I think the three of us primarily overlap in our impatience, or rather the small unit, the small step. And I think that there's a huge audience that is sort of experimenting with LLMs from like a huge step perspective.
So the way that I'm and I'm continuing to improve this. I'm not saying that I'm an expert at this by any means, because we're all learning. This is the exciting thing, is we're all learning this.
Yeah, and I'm also not sure how to ask the question, because it's difficult to narrow down the
workflow is important.
Yes.
I said that the very first thing I did. So whenever I talk about continuous delivery, I talk about that your pipeline is feature zero. Well, and a pipeline is how you establish your guardrails and quality gates. So what's the very first thing I did? I created agents that were my quality gates. And it's very easy to create an agent, by the way. This is not something that's rocket science, because I can do it. In Claude code, they're called skills, but that's what they are. And what I did was I told Claude I need an agent that's an expert. It said, create an agent that's an expert at domain-driven design. And then it did. And then I went and read the markdown file for it. And if I disagreed with something, I tweaked it. I did the same thing with behavior-driven development and acceptance test-driven development. I did the same thing with all of the guardrails that I wanted to put in place, that I could offload these things and really focus on what I'm trying to build and not how it's done. And so I just offloaded all of the review for those things to agents. And then I wrote a prompt for what I was trying to do. not even feature files. And I told Claude to generate a feature file that represented what I was trying to do. Then I read the feature file and I tweaked the feature file either directly or sometimes just said, hey, this is wrong because I didn't want to change a whole bunch. If I'm changing a line or two, I'll do it manually. But if there's a bunch of stuff that needs to change, you got wrong, I'm like, hey, this wasn't quite understood correctly. Here's what I actually meant. And then go change, 30, 50, 100 lines of code or of Gherkin, right? And we collaborate that way. And then my prompting would basically be implement the first feature. Or not the first scenario. Implement the first scenario. Let's see if that works. In the first scenario, I wrote something a while back that was a scraper on Medium that required Google authentication. And the first scenario was, can I log into Google? And we implemented it, and I tried it. It worked. I said, excellent. Implement the next scenario. And then if it's wrong, I'm like, okay, here's how it's wrong. You're not quite getting all the URLs that I asked for. Here's an example of a URL that you're not getting. And they would go and say, oh, yeah, you're right. And then go and modify some regex or do whatever it needs to do so it can scrape the right thing. But you give it behaviors that it's not quite achieving. You give it, examples of what you'd like to see, not how to do it, what it is, what your goals are. And that's what the interaction is. And then it's sitting back and drinking coffee and waiting for it to pause and say, I've completed this. What do you think? Mm-hmm. Or building Lego or watching TV or having a bourbon.
Too much bourbon doesn't help you to learn.
The proper bourbon, you need exactly
the proper bourbon. Yeah, it's the best spirit, the best vision you get.
What was that? What was that? The Balmer.
I forget. Yeah.
The Balmer ratio.
Getting to another comment of Austro Wiggins, how much should a junior dev use LLM's agents, or maybe said another way, how can junior devs use things like Cloud Code in a way that still gains them skills?
So, I mean, number one, there's never going to be anything that's going to, well, I'm not going to say never. At the moment, there's nothing that replaces actually understanding what good code looks like. But you still need to understand what good code looks like. But you can also, I'm a senior at some things and I'm a junior at other things. If I don't know how to do a thing, my default now is to ask Claude or Gemini or something, whichever's going to give me the best answer. Explain this to me. How do I do this? Give me some examples. Give me some references to look at. Walk me through what the process is, right? This code I don't understand. Tell me what this code does. It's a much faster way of learning because you can get feedback and, from something that, a human could probably tell you if there's one available, if they're there right now, if they're not. But now I've got this plastic pal who's fun to be with who can answer all sorts of questions. I used it to debug my Jeep's electrical system. I don't know anything about Jeep electrical wiring. But as a junior developer, you can use it to go and ask it about things you don't know. And it might even give you hints about things you didn't know.
I do that so often in my entire life, not only software development, not only our code bases, but about so many things, entrepreneurial life, family life, that I am afraid what happens in 5 years with the dependency over AI. So that's
no, but it's a good compression algorithm, right? For example, I can say, hey, here's my recipe for banana bread. I'm all out of eggs. What can I use as an egg substitute, right? And it will just compress like people's average layman's generic substitutions for egg, because obviously you don't know that it's apple juice, right? Because
what it's it can only solve common problems that people have already solved before.
Yes.
Yeah, that's bullshit. Yes. So I have a very specific use case. On the other side of that wall is a Lego display area because my wife and I have a lot of Lego, and I've got French cleats hanging on the wall so we can hang Legos anywhere we want, but we also have light kits on these Legos we want lit up, so we have to figure out a way to have movable shelves attached to French cleats that you can just put anywhere, that will also have electrical connections without wires running everywhere. And so I explained this problem to ChatGPT, and it told me about a product I didn't even know existed called Flatwire. That's apparently a relatively new thing. And suggested ways. It suggested, well, it gave me multiple different options for how I could wire the French cleats in a way so I could have 12 volts of power running across the French cleats, and then just by dropping a shelf on it, get power to the shelf, which would then power the Lego. Right? Tell me that's a common problem people have solved.
Yeah, or for example, if you have like a problem that has multiple combinations and you just want examples. For example, I have this situation, I'm doing enterprise integration for this client, they're using AWS on this end and some exotic framework in Haskell that nobody has heard of on that end. I need to do a message outbox for this kind of use case. Just give me the simplest approach and list me all relevant documentation.
Well,
and it'll just try to piece it together as best as it can, and it'll just provide you with enough context for at least so that you can solve the problem.
Well, and to tie it all back into ownership, right? It's because I understand the problem I'm trying to solve, right? If you don't understand the problem you're trying to solve, how can you make good engineering decisions?
Yeah.
Right.
So, Bryan,
the problem, and you have to own the outcomes.
Bryan, since your German heritage, I want to explain to you what Rauschmeißer-Musik means.
Jawohl.
That is when you hear suddenly music where there was new music.
We're getting kicked
on
out.
A party, especially, or on a party in the in the early morning, right? Then it's time to leave. That's a German way to
No,
say
now is the
go
last
out.
round, Adrian. You're not partying enough. Now is the last round. We need to leave when the music stops.
Exactly. It's a little bit like that. Just saying. So that was a great session. We had, interesting conversations. We had interesting people talking to us, and of course, like always, great conversations between us three. Much appreciated. That was a great one. Thanks to you both.
Thanks for letting me rant for a while.
It was nice. It was nice getting the boys together again. Like, we should do this setup more often.
I think so as well. And I don't think it was a rant today. It was a very constructive thing. Unusual, man. Unusual.
We need more bourbon for that, Adrian.
I appreciate the feedback. I'll try to be more constructive in the future.
Austin, if you're still listening, shoot me a DM on LinkedIn. I can help with most of those questions if you want to have a conversation. And to everybody else, very active audience today. Kudos. We like this. We like to see this.
No, and honestly, if anybody has any follow-up questions, and I'm capable of answering them, just DM me. I'm happy to answer any questions I can. I do it all the time.
Cool. Then I'll say goodbye to everyone. Thanks a lot, and see you next time. Goodbye.
Goodbye.